Hello and welcome back to the Chelmsford News Show. I'm Tom Christiano. Well, I'm here with one of our state representatives, Tami Gouveia. How are you, Tami?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much for coming. You're at our town offices today, right, Tami?
Yes, I am. Yes, this is my regular office hours. I have them about every other week in Chelmsford's 7:30 to 9 in room 205 at the town hall.
What, every other week you have them?
Yes, I want to make sure I'm accessible to residents so that I can hear what their concerns are, what their ideas are, suggestions that they have, those kinds of things. So I really want to be accessible and available. So that's why I'm doing office hours as frequently as I am.
That's fantastic, Tami. That's really a lot of hard work. I think that you're doing this. You're showing up at many of Chelmsford events, right, Tami? You're doing everything, I think, here in town.
Well, I wish I could get to more events and to more celebrations, but I think it's really important to, when people are making contributions to the town, to acknowledge and recognize them for their really great work and the ways that we all work together to make the town a stronger town. And from my perspective as the state rep, just to make sure that I'm supporting what the town needs. We're in the middle of the budget process up at the State House, so put in a couple budget amendments to support some of the efforts that are going on here in town and around the district. So I am working really hard to be accessible, available, and supportive in any way that I can.
You sure are, Tami, because I follow, all your posts and Facebook and Twitter and your page, your newsletter, and you're doing so much, which is fantastic. Speaking of funding, are you working on trying to get some of that funding released for Roberts Field, the renovation there?
Yes, and I've been in touch with various folks within the legislature and spoke with Representative Arcero about what he's been doing as well. Since he's been there longer, there's a lot for me to learn, and there have already been outreach efforts ongoing to release the money for Roberts Field.
Wonderful. Well, let's hope they get it. It's coming along great. Yeah. Bill Askenberg and the entire committee are working so hard on that. After Friendship Park is right there where Roberts Field is. I was there last Sunday with Bill Askenberg and Janet Askenberg, and we were doing a video to ask people to buy bricks, right? The bricks are $100, but people aren't going to be able to buy them too much longer, so there's a big push right now. Well, anyway, the Friendship Park was jam-packed with people because Bill and the committee and the town, everybody helped renovate it recently. The parking lot was filled over there. You've probably been there, right, a few times?
Yeah, I've been there, yes. Yeah.
And it came out beautiful, didn't it?
Yeah,
the Friendship Park?
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Yeah, and really, having safe places for people to be outside, engage in recreation, and just be in community is really, really important. I talk a lot about it with different parts of the district, including here in Chelmsford. And, the folks who are really advocating for the release of the funding have been very active in reaching out and making sure that we're aware up at the State House what is needed at the local level so that everybody can have access to the fields. So.
Which is fantastic. And I understand that this is your 100th day as a state representative?
Yes, yesterday was our 100 days after having been sworn in, and just reflecting on what it's been like to be an elected official for the first time for those first 100 days has been really important, and just thinking about all of the constituents I've heard from and communicated with. There's been well over 500 people who have, sent emails or come into the office to talk to me about what their issues are, what their concerns are. And when I say office, I mean either the bullpen up at the State House or even here during office hours.
500?
Yeah, over 500 throughout the district. And I've had 25 individual office hours, again, just so that I can be accessible. And the other things, it's a really fascinating position to be an elected official. It's really a privilege and an honor because people open up their hearts and their souls about what is really, bothering them, what they're passionate about, what they are worried about. And I feel really honored to hear those stories and then to be in a position where I can try to make a difference and try to help address people's concerns, whether I have constituents who have struggled with communicating and hearing back from Mass Health to, people who are just trying to advocate for particular issues that they care about, like the fields or I'm trying to think of one that's really come up a lot with folks in Chelmsford. Education funding is one big one. Yeah. So just making sure that I'm, listening to what people's concerns are while also learning this new job. And I have 159 other brand new colleagues that I'm working hard to get to know, because to get things done up in the building, it's about building relationships. It's about listening to, well, what are things that are going on in other parts of the state that might be similar to what residents in Chelmsford are facing, and how can we partner on some of those issues? So that's been a lot of what the job has focused on, while also getting into the business of legislating and advocating for budgets and bills.
And speaking of the State House, do you have your office all set up now and with business cards and everything?
No, we're still in the bullpen. There are about 9 newly electeds who are still in the bullpen. It's been a pretty slow process, I think, in part, it was a fairly large incoming class, 25 new reps. There's a lot of shuffling of the decks and moving offices. So we're anticipating that we'll be in next week into an office, and then I'll get official business cards, and I'll be able to communicate with everybody in town where my office is if they want to come find me up at the State House.
Wonderful. I'd love to visit you sometime. I visited Jeff Hall's office many years ago. I think that was about a school funding issue as well. I think we took a bus and people from Chelmsford. This was about 2007, something like that. And there was something about we really needed additional funding. And so the whole town, many parents and other people were heading to the State House to try to get more funding for Chelmsford schools. So, but it's a beautiful place there. I just wish the parking was readily accessible in Boston and less expensive.
Yeah, the parking is really prohibitive for a lot of people to get up to the State House. And that's, again, another reason why I'm doing these office hours, so people don't have to trek all the way into Boston. It is very expensive to park there. It's expensive to try to get there. Oftentimes now you're sitting in 2 hours of traffic, or it takes a while to take the train in. So, that is a concern, that is an issue. And one that I don't have any control over or any power over, but certainly if people do come up to the State House, let us know, because as your state rep, I can take people onto the House floor and talk a little bit about what it's like down there, but you can't go onto the House floor unless you're with a state rep. And so I've been able to do that for some constituents who have come to visit already, and would love to do that for even more folks, particularly students, and just meeting with students and talking with students. And actually, there were high school students who came to the State House earlier this week. I think it was Tuesday. Yeah, so we had a really good time. Yeah.
And speaking of the State House floor, you gave your first speech about something, or maybe you could talk a little about that on the State House floor.
Yeah, so just to give a little bit of context for a quick minute, I'm on the committee for children, families, and persons with disabilities. And that committee took up 2 bills early on that didn't get through the State House last year. And those were lifting the cap on kids and banning conversion therapy. And so as a committee member, as the parent of a transgender son, I spoke in favor of banning conversion therapy because of sort of the inhumane impacts that conversion therapy has on minors in particular. And so I made that my first floor speech when the bill came up for a vote in the House a couple weeks ago, and talked about the fact that all kids in our state deserve love and support, regardless of what their identity is, whether you're a person of color, a low-income person, a person with a disability, a person who identifies as transgender or gay or lesbian, that all of our kids really deserve support and love, and conversion therapy is the opposite of that. It's really damaging. It's been condemned by all of the major health institutions, and we did pass it, and the governor signed it last Thursday, and so now we're the 16th state to ban conversion therapy in the United States.
Which is fantastic. Thank you so much for working on that issue. I'm very supportive of all of our transgender brothers and sisters. I went to the vigil at the First Parish Church last month for that, and we read the names of about 400 transgender individuals who have died or were killed. The average age life expectancy is something like 30. You know, it's so difficult to be a transgender person. There's so much discrimination that you face for the way you were born.
Yeah, That is definitely true, and the people who are dying at higher rates are transgender women of color in particular. Oftentimes find themselves in places where people are particularly cruel and discriminatory in terms of the way they treat people. So, that's not who we are as a state. We really are a welcoming state. We embrace everybody. I think that's why we saw question 3 pass with, or we said no to reversing transgender rights and access to public accommodations. And so we saw that voters in Massachusetts really overwhelmingly support our transgender neighbors and family members. And this was just another step in that right direction to really put our values into practice.
Well, thank you so much for working on that very important issue. And were there any other speeches that you gave at the State House on the floor that you might want to mention?
That was my first one, and I haven't had an opportunity to give another speech. Right after that, the next bills that we took up weren't ones that were appropriate or necessary for me to speak to. But we are heading towards budget debate, and I would anticipate that there might be some things that I would want to advocate on the House floor around, just to make sure that we have what we need in the state so that everybody can thrive. So we'll stay tuned on that.
But I think you've also testified at a number of committee meetings, right? Public committee meetings. I think you've testified reading your newsletters, right?
Yeah, I've testified a couple times. I have numerous speaking engagements every single week, whether it's at a house party to support women getting into elected office, or talking with young people and sitting on a panel around climate change and the policies that we really need to put into place to protect our environment for future generations. So those are National Association of Social Workers had a big celebration up at the State House. Because I'm a public health social worker and I'm in elected office, was asked to be a featured speaker of that. So it really runs the gamut what I speak on, and my job is to use my voice on behalf of all of the residents in the district. So been really taking that seriously.
Wonderful. And you have a newsletter that you email out, right, Tammy?
Yes, we send it out, every 2 to 3 weeks, depending on what's going on up at the State House. And I'm trying not to inundate people's email inboxes, but if you want to sign up for it, it's TamiGouveia.com, and that's my website, and you can just find where to sign up for the newsletter there.
Wonderful. And I get that newsletter, and you do a great job with it, Tammy. Senator Barrett does a nice job with his newsletter as well. It's great that you send out those things with all kinds of information. And so you've been attending a lot of Chelmsford activities. I think I interviewed you at the Chowder Fest last, right? A couple of months ago in February. How did you like that?
Oh, that was so much fun. It was really great to come in and sample the chowder and then see people dancing in the middle of the day. It's just really fantastic use of the space. And, the Senior Center is always very welcoming and really a great partner in the community. So it's really great the way the space was used. And games for the kids was very, very intergenerational and very interactive. And it was just a wonderful afternoon.
And it was great to see you there that day. I was so surprised. I was looking out, and you saw me, and oh my God, there's Tami Gouveia, our state representative, is here. And you were the only state rep from our district that was there, I believe, that day, which was very nice, because not all the selectmen were there that day, and they can't go to everything, and that's perfectly understandable. But it's so great that you're showing up at so many things. And I just heard this morning that you're going to be volunteering at our town-wide cleanup coming up later this month, right?
That's right, and I'm really excited that the students in the Ecology Club are taking the lead on that. That's one of the things that I learned this morning as well, and really looking forward to the cleanup. I used to do cleanups when I grew up in Lowell. I would do cleanups all the time. I was part of Keep Lowell Beautiful, which is an affiliate of Keep America Beautiful, and just as the snow goes away and we clean up all of the salt and the sand and we see the trash that's left behind, it's really great to get out and clean up the environment for spring and for Earth Day, which is April 22nd. So I will be out there as part of the townwide cleanup on April 20th.
That's fantastic, Tammy. And I always tell people, too, you don't have to go and pick up a special bag and all that. You could just go out in your own neighborhood, and hopefully you could do this quite often and every day when you go for walks. Just pick up trash that you see lying around, and there's not too much like in the old days. I think people are a little bit more careful, but in some areas, there's a lot of trash, some of the pass-through roads, that kind of thing. And just everybody to do their share, their part, before you know it, the whole town is perfectly clean.
Yeah, it's great. It's really nice. It's its own sort of spring cleaning, right?
Yeah, I have to do that in my house, don't I? In my yard. Oh my God. So some of the other issues that you're working on, Tami, would you like to mention it, one or two or three of them?
Yeah, so one of the things that I'll really be focused on in this budget, just because it's relevant to the budget, is getting more services and more strategies out there around opioids in particular. I came into the building and into the State House with a background in opioid prevention and want to really put that to good use, since we still continue to see people dying from exposure to fentanyl in drugs that they're using. And so focused on getting a pilot study going to see if we're testing for the presence of fentanyl, how does that change people's behavior in terms of their drug using behavior. So really taking a look at that. Another thing that happened over the course of this week is I was asked by the chair of the Committee on Children, Families, and Persons with Disabilities is to oversee a subcommittee focused on adverse childhood and community experiences, also known as ACEs, because I'm convinced that we could be doing a lot more to address childhood trauma. And the ways that childhood trauma manifests itself later on in adulthood could be not being able to hold a job, homelessness, incarceration, substance use. So I think that we could be doing a lot more as a state to really address and understand what children are experiencing and what exposures they have to childhood trauma. And so with my background in public health social work and my background having worked in residential treatment facilities with young girls, putting that to good use so that we are, over time, if we're really addressing adverse childhood experiences early on, we will have tremendous savings in human suffering and costs later on. Because what they're also finding with research is that if you experience childhood trauma and it doesn't go addressed, you're at greater risk for heart disease, cancer, stress, suicide, all kinds of other issues that really impact our community.
Sorry, the light went out here. Let's see. Well, it looks like we still have some visibility. So maybe we could wrap it up for now, okay? The interview for now. Thank you very much, Tami, for being here. This is at the Chelmsford Town offices on April, 12th, 2019. April 12th, I think it is. So Tami comes here every 2 weeks, is it, Tami?
Yes, I'll be here in another 2 weeks, yes.
That's fantastic, Tami. You're working so hard. Let me see what we could do with the lights, and we might be back later. But thank you very much, Tami.
Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Tom.
I'll be a blower girl.
It's not going to show up.
So do I hold this? Sure, you can do it. Okay. You want to that, or what do you want to do?
Yeah.
You want
Right here, yeah. Right here?
Okay.
Okay. That, so they'll get a couple photos. And we're going to do a little countdown.
Hold it, or that, or?
I have the sign. 2 minutes.
Hey, how about the employee sitting over there?
Awesome. Yeah, get over here, Glenn. Tom, get over here.
Okay.
No, come on.
Come on, hey, come on.
Come on.
We're gonna look like we have friends here. Come on, give me some spaces.
Glenn's hiding.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, we're ready. I'm videotaping now, so I can take photos from the video. So just go ahead.
Very good.
Whenever.
Okay.
But you're going to do a
So,
countdown.
I'm going to do a countdown.
Oh,
Okay. Okay, ready?
it's good if you could look at this camera, if you want. Yeah. Okay, over here. Ready?
Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Good. Good.
Okay.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Hello, I'm still at the Volunteer Fair in March of 2019, and I'm here with Nancy from the, Upper
Merrimack Valley Medical Reserve
Corps, which I'm a member of as well, by the way, which I joined what was it, when did we start that, 10 years ago or something?
In 2004, this is our 15th year.
15 years, wow, that's how old I am. I'm at least 15 years old.
But that would mean I'm old too.
Oh, no, no.
Get it
Yeah,
back.
you've been here since the beginning,
Since the
right?
beginning,
Nancy?
2004.
Remember the parade? We even did some parades together.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
2007, 2008, around there,
Yeah.
9.
Yep.
That was fun.
It was a good time. We were on your program, as a matter of fact.
Yes, yeah.
News
And-
television.
In fact, Nancy does a lot for the Westford TV as well. You live in Westford, right?
Yes, I do.
In fact, do you work in the nurse's office there or something?
Maybe I can give you a little bit of background
Oh,
about
yes,
that.
yeah.
Sure. And thank you for asking, Tom.
That's,
So the Medical Reserve Corps started nationally in 2002, specifically as a result of the events of September 11. Well-meaning people would show up at the disaster sites with no training, no background, no ID, wanting to help, but basically a lot of times just getting in the way and causing problems. So it was decided, why don't we organize these well-meaning volunteers, medical, non-medical, behavioral health, anybody who really wants to serve their community can join. There are 900 units across the United States right now. Ours covers 7 communities. You ready for this? Billerica, Chelmsford, Drake-it, Lowell, Tewksbury, Tingsboro, and Westford, which is the host agent.
wow.
So my office is in Millennium School in Westford. I report to the health director in Westford at the town hall, Jeffrey Stevens. This is our 15th year, and again, we use our volunteers for a range of things. Basically, disaster response is job one. If, for example, you remember there was Winter Storm Quinn in March, a lot of shelters were set up around the region to help people stay someplace overnight that was safe and observed with nurses around, non-medical people. So we had emergency shelters overnight. We had warming centers during the day, and they were available upon community need, making calls, check calls. We've also helped with that measles disaster and flu clinics, public health emergencies, and public communications as well, educating people, teaching CPR.
Speaking of the measles, are children locally getting vaccinated the way they should?
Massachusetts has a very high rate of vaccination. That's why we're not nearly as badly affected by the measles outbreak as, say, California and Washington State.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else we should say about the Medical Reserve Corps before we go?
Certainly. If you're all interested in the unit, go to our website, www.umvrc.org, short for Upper Merrimack Valley Medical Reserve Corps. I'm Nancy Burns, the coordinator. The number to call anytime, 978-399-2549. Thanks for asking, Tom.
Thank you very much, Nancy. It's great talking with you again. It's always great to see you.
You too.
I think Nancy has the greatest personality of anybody I know. Thank you
You're
so much,
nice.
Nancy.
Thanks a lot, Tom.
Thank you.
So first of all, I have to thank Jay Lang. I went to high school with Jay. Him and I went to Lowell High School together. I played volleyball with his wife, and longtime friend, doing great things in Chelmsford, where my 3 stepsons went to school here. Not this particular school, because they were South Row, McCarthy Junior High, but great school system. How did I summon the courage? You know, I knew after the 2016 election that I had to do something. I mean, there were only 19% women in the Congress. I was working in a field where we're trying to get more women into leadership roles in business. I knew what happened to the conversation when more women were around the table. And I felt so strongly about needing more women around the table down in Washington. But I was really happy with my Congresswoman. So I just sort of thought about how am I going to help more women get elected? And then Congresswoman Tsongas announced her retirement. So it wasn't a long deliberation. It was one of those moments of clarity that I think is rare in your life. I've made a lot of career decisions with a lot less clarity. So this one was, I didn't have to summon courage. I didn't have to think long and hard. I, of course, had a few conversations with my husband about how we were going to make the logistics work. I knew I'd love the job. I think the deliberation I had to go through was, will I survive the interview process? They're very different. And But, you know, I think what we all saw in 2018 was a lot of women who thought just the way I did. It was much easier for me to jump into a field of 10 candidates where there were 5 women. It was much easier for me to run alongside thousands of women who were running across the country. The women whose shoulders I stand on, they didn't have those optics. They didn't have that support. So what they did was much harder and required much more courage than me. So it is a very proud class to be a part of. It is the most diverse class ever elected to this Congress on all different dimensions, race, ethnicity, faith, age. But I also join now 131 women who serve in the United States Congress. And that's important. That's important for our Girl Scouts to see. That's important for our young sons and daughters to see. Those are optics that didn't always exist, and we're not going backwards. We've changed forever. I am a co-sponsor of the Green New Deal. And I'll tell you why. There's no question that the Green New Deal laid out some bold goals for our country. We need bold goals. We need to reverse so much of what's been damaged the last few years by not focusing on our environment. But the number one reason why I did is just to change the conversation. We are having a conversation now about the environment, and we need to. It is our environment is the most precious resource, and we need to take care of it. And so there's going to be a lot of proposals that are discussed. A carbon tax, carbon capture, high-speed rail, getting to renewable energy at a timeline that we can handle, especially in this region. And we need to have all of those conversations because we haven't been having them, and our children and our future are paying a price as a result. So, you know, sometimes people say that, you know, they mention some of the myths around the Green New Deal. Look, it is an aspiration for our country for us to be setting bold and audacious goals for us to work toward. And we're going to figure out what those goals are. We're going to figure that out in this Congress. We're going to figure it out in this session. And that's the conversation we all need to be a part of. Thank you.